Welcome at Max Guitar. My name is Robert, and today we're having a conversation about my 1960 Les Paul, the Dutchburst, and how it got to be a Collector's Choice number 18. It's 2006, and a customer of mine came in to the store. I didn't know him then. He since then became a good customer. And he says, "Do you want to take a look at this old guitar?" I said, "Well, okay, what is it?" Because it was packed in a black case, very un-Gibson-like case. Later it appeared to be retolexed, so that's why I didn't recognize it at once. And so I opened it, thinking it might be a Yamaha or something, and of course out came this guitar. But then at the time it looked quite differently. It was totally dull and dusty and full of dirt, and of course, well, it hadn't been used for years and years. So I had to sort of recheck the serial number 3-4 times to be sure that this was really what I thought it was. So I asked the guy, "Do you know what this is?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I do know what this is. It's a guitar that was bought by my father, a Dutch jazz musician called Jan, and he's been playing it his whole life, and I just want to know what it's worth." I said, "Well, of course it's worth a lot of money, but do you want to sell it?" And he said, "Well, no, I'd rather not sell it, because my father recently passed away, and it just doesn't feel right to sell it." And I know I could understand that, relate to that. So I didn't pressure him any further, and I said, "Well, what do you want to do with the guitar?" He said, "Well, I'm keeping it in an old piano stashed away, so nobody could find it really easily. But whenever I do want to sell it, I'll keep you in mind." I said, "Well, please do." I never pressurized him. I did sell him another Les Paul, though, one that he could play outdoors, because of course an instrument like this is worth a lot of money. And it doesn't feel right when you go out to a bar and anybody could just steal it. I mean, I do treat it as a normal instrument, but the second you own one, it just feels quite differently. You're a little bit more careful than you would with another guitar. Yes, there are a lot of anecdotes about this guitar, told to me by the son of Jan. And I'm not using his last name simply because his son asked me not to do that. So that's the only reason, actually. One of the nicer anecdotes is that, of course, it's public knowledge now that this guy was a jazz guitarist. Of course, he was playing this guitar, let's say, in the 60s and 70s, like a new guitar, like you would now any other guitar that you have for 5 to 15 years. And he didn't actually see it like anything other than his tool to make music. So he wasn't particularly over cautious with the guitar, and he kept the guitar in the back of his old Lada car, and not even locked. So the guitar was unlocked on the driveway where he lived. And if somebody asked him, "Are you not afraid that people will steal this guitar?" He said, "Well, it's an old battered guitar. Who wants an old battered guitar?" So that's one anecdote. Another one is that while keeping this guitar in his Lada, most of the time, of course, at one specific night, I think it was in the 70s, fire broke out, not in the car but in his house, and the car was on the driveway in the garden, and everything actually burned down. So all his other instruments and his son's instruments also were lost in that fire. And during the night, when the fire brigade tried to sort of extinguish the fire, this car was in the way, so they towed the car from the driveway. So in the middle of the street, there was really nothing else to do, and they just left it there until the next morning. And of course, the guitar was still there, the only instrument that was actually saved from that fire. So these are funny anecdotes. And another anecdote, the last one I will share, is that the story about how this guitar got partly refinished. If you can see on the back, it's very shiny, and this was because in the in the 70s when they were playing these cruise ships. There was this jazz trio, and the drummer thought that this guitar looked worse and worse. And the case, of course, if you know these old brown Gibson cases, they damage very easily. And he thought it might be a good idea to surprise his fellow companion guitar player, in this case, and retolix the case. So what he did, he took the original Lifton case and he retolixed it black. So there's a picture of that here. And another one is that the guitar, of course, got damaged while it was, when it was played during all these sessions, and you can actually see on the back that there were some places that were worn. So he took out this just an old brush and a can of varnish, and he sort of painted the neck over. Something that would scare any guitar collector, but this is what he did. You can actually see some of the paint rests here. Of course, it's clear, so you don't actually see a lot of it, but this is what they did to make the guitar look nicer for the audience. Nice anecdote, I think.